During one of Aaron Burr's many treason trials, John Adams sneered that Burr had to be an idiot or a lunatic, before adding, "I never believed him to be a fool." The Broadway finale of Hamilton asks the haunting question, who lives, who dies, who tells your story? In it, Hamilton finally earns praise, even from his political enemies. But most of the song belongs to Eliza. She refuses to waste her time on tears, lives another 50 years, and uses her husband's name and writings to shape his legacy. It wasn't easy. As Smithsonian Magazine notes, now widowed, Elizabeth faced tragedy on top of tragedy. Her father died, and her eldest daughter suffered a nervous breakdown. Creditors repossessed her house. But Elizabeth scraped together enough money to buy it back, a demonstration of the dogged resourcefulness that got her family through lean times. Without Elizabeth's work, Charnow says, his biography of Alexander Hamilton, and by extension the smash musical it is based on, would have been difficult to conceive. Her efforts made it easier to research Alexander's life, because after his death, his enemies were in power, Charnow says. To collect the material, Elizabeth was working against the political system of the time, and time itself. The magazine also calls her the last living link to the revolution. She was an adult when the war began, danced at Washington's inaugural ball, lived through the War of 1812, witnessed the birth of abolitionism, and died on November 9, 1854. Just as the country she helped shape teetered towards civil war. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story shows how Hamilton achieved immortality. He died young, but Eliza preserved him. Burr, the one who lived, was left behind, watching others define his life. Some ghost hunters even claim that he lingers still today. Of all the alleged sightings, the most credible comes from Richmond Hill, the New York home he once shared with his wife. There, people say, Aaron Burr's ghost paces restlessly, waiting for his daughter Theodosia to return. But she never did. Her ship vanished at sea, robbing Burr of the one person who never abandoned him. He outlived Washington, Adams, and even his old rival Jefferson. He watched Andrew Jackson and Sam Houston pull off the kind of unauthorized military expeditions that had once branded him a traitor. They became folk heroes. Burr became a cautionary tale. As an embittered old man, Burr trashed the reputations of nearly every founder. He told anyone who'd listen that Washington was entirely without independence of character and without talent, and completely under the influence of Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton, though gifted, was a parasite of Washington, amiable and ungenerous towards all others. Jefferson? A weakling who would have fled Monticello if Burr came as near as Alexandria. Madison? Odious. Monroe? Naturally dull and stupid, illiterate, and a hypocritical sycophant. The only founder he praised was Benjamin Franklin, who he claimed was full of suave courtesy and kindness. Historian David Stewart sums it up for us. Burr, the inconvenient survivor of America's founding era, was resolutely fouling the punch bowl during any celebration of those he had known well and disdained roundly. He would not, it seemed, go away. That's fitting. Burr's later years overflow with the type of irony Franklin might have enjoyed. The final chapter of his story mixes emperors and prostitutes, delusions and schemes, all flavored with a self-importance almost comic in its excess. It reads like a chapter only Franklin himself, the man who once dared to publish advice to a young man on the choice of a mistress, could have truly appreciated. You're listening to Empires, Anarchy, and Other Notable Moments, a podcast designed for deep dives that assist in the teaching of history. This series focuses upon America's fallen founder, Aaron Burr. Episode number 6, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Buries Your Story. Humans don't handle change well in our twilight years. Aristotle even devoted 3 chapters of his rhetoric to the traits of people at different stages of life. Youth, he said, is ruled by desire, not experience. The young are idealistic, impulsive, and full of hope because they simply haven't lived long enough to know better. Middle age is different. By then, we've learned some hard lessons, but we still have energy. Our desires are steady, our actions balanced. We know the difference between what's good and what just feels good. Old age, though, that's where the danger creeps in. Time makes us hesitant. Experience makes us cynical. Our energy fades, and instead of planning for the future, we look backward with rose-colored glasses. In short, youth hopes too much, old age trusts too little, and middle age walks the line. As Aaron Burr entered his final chapter, he embodied Aristotle's warning that the old live by memory rather than by hope. Today, we know far more about psychology than Aristotle ever could. And while it's impossible and irresponsible to diagnose historical figures, modern concepts can give us insight into Burr's behavior. One concept stands out: cognitive rigidity. It's a mental bias where someone can't adapt their beliefs or behaviors even when circumstances demand it. While it can appear at any age, our brains get more rigid as we grow older. Dr. James Copeland, a developmental pediatrician, explains it through what he calls the magic 8-ball from hell. Imagine Aaron Burr asking the toy for advice, but instead of answers like very doubtful or ask again later, the ball only spits out negatives. That kind of rigidity fuels external behaviors like compulsions, agitation, and endless repetition. Internally, it feeds obsessions, perfectionism, and depression. And that's the only way to make sense of Burr's last 3 decades. He was living by the rules of this broken magic 8-ball, shaken again and again, but always getting the same dark answers. Burr wasn't free of danger after his treason trial. Chief Justice John Marshall had saved him once by narrowing the Constitution's definition of treason, but the federal government pressed on with charges under the Neutrality Act, a far easier crime to prove. Burr's main defense in the treason trial had been that his expedition targeted Mexico, not the United States. But since America was at peace with its southern neighbor, that defense became a liability. By his own admission, the plan violated federal law. To escape the gallows, Burr leaned into a lesser crime. His next trial was set for Ohio, ensuring the disgraced former vice president stayed in the public crosshairs. On his way there, he saw the fury firsthand. In Baltimore, a mob of 1,500 torched effigies of him and Chief Justice Marshall. In Philadelphia, creditors and co-conspirators cornered him about his debts. Burr had nothing left but family portraits, and he handed those over as payment. Blenderhassett, once his wealthy backer, now branded him a heartless swindler in the last swoon of his disorder. Congress weighed in as well. John Quincy Adams, writing the official report, concluded, without the government's intervention, Burr would have caused a war of the most horrible description, both foreign and domestic. Historian David Stewart puts it more bluntly. Burr had become a political untouchable now, a rival to Benedict Arnold for the title of most despised American. He had neither money nor property and could not ply his profession, the law. No client would wish to be identified with him. Some even wondered aloud whether Burr might end his own life. then a glimmer of relief. New Jersey dropped its lingering indictment against him for the death of Alexander Hamilton. New York would later follow suit. With those clouds lifting, Burr skipped the Ohio trial entirely. Instead, he boarded a ship for England. It was a cold calculation. He knew in Ohio that conviction was certain, and the one conspirator actually tried under the Neutrality Act had been punished with just 3 hours in an Indiana jail. The lesson was clear. Time could dull even the sharpest wounds. But Burr's real reason for heading to Europe wasn't escape. It was ambition. He still dreamed of resurrecting his expedition, this time to liberate Mexico from Spain. Burr's obsession with filibustering, the private unauthorized military expedition, didn't end with his first failure. Originally, it was meant to restore his reputation after killing Hamilton. Now, after the Mexico debacle, he tried the same move again. The magic 8-ball of his mind would have labeled it compulsion, insistent repetition, driven by unmet expectations. Seen in the best light, Burr's plan wasn't entirely insane. A successful invasion of Mexico, or even Spanish Florida, would prove that his true target had always been abroad, not the United States. It might have cleared him, at least in the court of public opinion, from the dreaded charge of treason. An expansion into the South fit the spirit of early Manifest Destiny: popular, profitable, and patriotic. But Burr's goodwill was gone. His reputation in America was ruined. His fundraising networks had dried up. So he turned to England. When Burr landed there in 1808, Britain was locked in war with Napoleonic France, which, through the Bonapartes, also controlled Spain. Backing an expedition against Spanish Mexico might have appealed to the British. It could disrupt Spain's empire, strengthen Britain's foothold in Latin America, and give it strategic ground near the Gulf. Burr even had allies in shipping who had stayed loyal and silent during his treason trial, and Britain had a track record of supporting proxy filibusters when it suited their interests. What made less sense was Burr's claim that he still held British citizenship, simply because he'd been born a subject of the crown. Colonel Burr, the man who fought to overthrow that same crown, was now insisting he still had his birthright as a loyal Briton, a bizarre argument to make 32 years after the Revolution. His sudden appearance in England at a time when the US and Britain were teetering towards war infuriated President Jefferson. Burr slipped into the Isles under a false name. Historian Nancy Eisenberg notes, President Jefferson imagined Burr bent on revenge, selling his talents to any country at war with the United States. The president predicted, if we have war with Spain, he will become a Spanish general. If with England, he will go to Canada and be employed there. Internal convulsion may be attempted if no game offers more hope. Burr saw England as opportunity. Jefferson saw him as a traitor in waiting. By February, British leaders were openly debating whether to send 10,000 troops to invade South America. In April, Burr boarded a ship for London. He arrived on July 13th and quickly sought out high-ranking officials. But events moved faster than his schemes. When Spain fell under the sway of Joseph Napoleon, Britain scrapped its invasion plans. Supporting South American rebels suddenly made more sense than carving out colonies. Because the rebels wanted independence, not a new monarch, Burr's dream of a British-backed expedition collapsed overnight. For most men, that would have been the end. Not Aaron Burr. Obsessed and unyielding, he spent the next 3 months pounding on closed doors, pitching anyone who would listen. By November, American newspapers mocked him for failing to deliver his so-called master plan. That fall, Burr began keeping a journal. For a man who had treated his private life like a vault, it was a startling shift. His earlier correspondence hints at elaborate systems of colored ribbons, signals to the reader on how to handle the letter, often meaning burn after reading. Now, with his memory fading, Burr admitted he wanted a record, something to look back on when he was reunited with his daughter and grandson. The journal reveals much about his state of mind, but little about his true motives. Burr knew he was being watched by more than one government. Even so, the diary remains our fullest window into his inner life, especially since most of his papers went down at sea with Theodosia. Historian Nancy Eisenberg notes that Jefferson's writings presently occupy 33 modern volumes and are still being compiled and edited down to the last detail. Hamilton's writings are contained in 27 published volumes. Burr's in 2. Historians, as a result, have found Burr to be a man of mystery, and many, nearly all, have insisted that he had no political philosophy to compare with or rank alongside Jefferson, Hamilton, and the other traditional founding fathers. But that claim is misleading. Burr did have a political philosophy shaped in part by utilitarianism, the belief that morality is measured by whether an action creates the greatest good for the greatest number. His bitter rivalry with Jefferson can even be framed in this way. Burr saw the third president as weak and feeble, and believed removing him would benefit the nation. Thus, it was moral. Even his plan for Western secession could be justified under this lens. If breaking away produced a stronger, more responsive government, then secession served the greater good. While lobbying in London, Burr grew close to Jeremy Bentham, the world's leading utilitarian thinker. They became fast friends. Burr even lived in Bentham's house for months. They had much in common. As Eisenberg writes, Bentham unsparingly attacked Jefferson's Declaration of Independence as a hodgepodge of rhetorical nonsense upon stilts. He believed that human behavior, like the law of physics, could best be explained by 2 universal conditions: the forces of pleasure and the forces of pain. Calculating human needs, then, was the key to measuring genuine political interests. Burr eagerly devoured these ideas. Soon, Bentham's philosophy was stitched into his grand design. He even schemed to smuggle Bentham's pamphlets into the hands of Spanish revolutionaries, propaganda for his vision of Latin American liberation. With Britain uninterested in his schemes, Burr had time to enjoy the finer and seedier sides of London life. His journals mention sightseeing around the city and countryside, but most of the pages focus on his sexual exploits abroad. If that sounds jarring, remember, Burr claimed he was writing the journal for his daughter, to share the fun and interesting tidbits of his adventures overseas. Like a real-life Barney Stinson, Burr recorded every encounter with obsessive detail: the date, location, a description of the woman, and even a rating. Historian Nancy Eisenberg notes that he is intentionally playful in the pages of his journal. He crafts a sexual cipher for himself, inventing code words to describe the different types of women he encounters, classifying them according to age, marital status, sexual experience, and occasionally nationality. One shorthand entry reads VIS period, INV period, PR period, capital U period, PA period, capital BI period, JO period, capital MA period, BI period, capital FA period. Somehow that translates to: after repeated invitations, he slept with a Swedish maid who was not very handsome, but well built. And no, I didn't make that up. That comes straight from the Vice President's own diary. Burr's appetite for sex didn't start in London. Princeton University recently published an article by Sherry Burr, an African-American descendant, revealing the truth about one of his hidden families. Burr had a long relationship with Mary Emmons, a woman from Calcutta who worked in his household. Though the Burrs were enslavers, Mary likely served as a paid domestic worker. DNA evidence and family oral histories confirm they had 2 children together, while Burr was still married to Theodosia, whose 3 pregnancies all ended in loss. For his time, Burr held unusually progressive views on race. In New York, he even tried to push through a bill to abolish slavery. He saw enslavement not as proof of racial inferiority, but as a temporary condition society could and should end. Most of his encounters seem to have been consensual, but the sheer volume of them gave Burr a reputation as a debauched rake, the male equivalent of a slut. He rarely softened his words. Thomas Foster, author of Sex and the Founding Fathers, explains that Burr's earliest biographer destroyed many of his letters to protect not Burr's reputation, but the reputations of the women and their families. The journals that do remain are blunt. Some entries are marked bad, tolerable, or simply bah. Historian David Stewart notes, several entries describe multiple episodes in a day or encounters with 2 women at once. On occasion, Burr expressed regret for his follies with prostitutes, observing once how unnecessary and how silly. Yet in other passages, he described sexual release as the only remedy for his restlessness and irritability. Even here, Burr's compulsions show through. Sex became not just a pleasure, but a coping mechanism, another sign of his irresponsibility. Many of his trysts were paid for on borrowed money, adding lust to the long list of debts that haunted him for his entire life. While overseas, Burr remained penniless. In England, his only job was chasing support for yet another invasion of Spanish America. By April, even the British police had had enough. They roughed him up, seized some of his journals, and made it clear, time to move on. So Burr drifted. He praised Sweden, tried and failed to get into Russia, John Quincy Adams personally blocked him there, and then pushed on through Denmark and Germany before landing in Napoleon's France. There, Burr clutched his rigid magic 8-ball and pitched his wildest scheme yet. Historian Nancy Eisenberg explains, he had several conversations with one well-connected official who had ties to the foreign secretary, and the latter then submitted a summary of these meetings to Napoleon. In short, Burr's goal, expressly stated, was to take Florida and use it as a base of operations to attack Mexico, and possibly the Bahamas, Cuba, and Jamaica. He allowed that the plan would succeed if the United States were at war with Great Britain, something that loomed on the near horizon in 1810. And there was a good chance that Canada could be persuaded to seek independence at the same time. All he wanted from Napoleon in order to effect his plan was 2 or 3 frigates. He was clear in stating that he did not intend to conquer the Spanish colonies, nor divide the United States, but only to spur independence movements in the former. It was audacious. It was also absurd. Burr didn't even speak Spanish. He signed up for lessons in Paris, but quit after just 4 sessions. Still, he painted himself as a messiah in waiting, claiming 40,000 unemployed Americans stood ready to follow him. He boasted of a third party in the U.S., full of talent and energy that obeyed only him. He told anyone who'd listen, they in Louisiana are still waiting for me to keep my promise. Historian David Stewart cuts through the fantasy. Burr was retailing plans that might have seemed barely plausible in a smoky Kentucky tavern in 1805. In a Parisian drawing room in early 1810, they were fantastic, even delusional. Many of Burr's assertions had been tested and disproved. The people of Tennessee and Kentucky had not rallied to his cause. The Creoles of New Orleans had never petitioned Napoleon to deliver them from American rule, nor had they risen in rebellion to welcome Burr. 5 long years had passed since he was last in their city. Burr's ability to raise funds for the expedition was plainly non-existent. Indeed, by claiming he also could conquer Canada, Burr revealed a desperate eagerness that exposed him as a gambler playing with borrowed money, down to the very last throw of the dice. His words reached Napoleon's brother, but went no further. After 3 fruitless months, Burr applied for a passport home. France refused. His journal for the day is stark, stating, "Here I am, a prisoner of the state and nearly penniless." Devoid of legal options, Burr resorted to smugglers. In Amsterdam, he found a ship captain willing to sneak him back to America, but the vessel was boarded by the British and the plan collapsed. American papers mocked him as a deranged madman wandering Europe. Eventually, he scraped together passage to Boston, his fare covered partly by friends who still believed in him and partly by enemies who simply wanted him gone. He sailed under the alias Adolphus Anat. One can imagine the megalomaniac in him savoring the moment of his return. Surely his reappearance would shake the Republic. Instead, his grand reveal amounted to little more than reopening a law office in New York. That was the moment fate struck its cruelest blow. His only grandson had died of fever. His daughter Theodosia, his anchor, his closest confidant, set sail to see him. Her ship never arrived. Lost to storm or pirates, if one prefers the conspiratorial whisper, she was gone. The loss hollowed him. Even in Europe, it had been Theodosia who tethered him to life. He confessed how painful it was even to pack away her portrait. "I bid you bonsoir a dozen times before I shut you up in the dark case. I can never do it without regret. It seems as if I were burying you alive." Now she truly was gone. Burr wrote that he felt severed from the human race. With no family left, he buried himself in work, out of necessity as much as grief. Creditors hounded him into his twilight years. Hoping to ease the burden, he petitioned Congress for a Revolutionary War land grant. It was denied by the cousin of Alexander Hamilton's widow. Even karma, it seemed, still answered to the Hamiltons. Yet Burr was not entirely alone. He struck up a friendship with his co-counsel, a rising political star named Martin Van Buren. The two were inseparable enough that rumors swirled that Van Buren was Burr's illegitimate son. True or not, the younger man learned much from Burr and would go on to perfect the political machine that still defines American politics. Burr himself made only one serious attempt to meddle again, urging his son-in-law to spring a surprise presidential nomination for Andrew Jackson in 1816. The plot fizzled. Jackson would have to wait until 1824 to storm Washington with his own brand of vengeance. Burr's law practice in New York found its niche in an unlikely place, representing women in divorce cases. He championed their rights with unusual vigor for the time, even taking in one client and her 3 daughters, raising them in his own house as though they were his own. He also adopted 2 boys, widely believed to be his biological children. For a moment, it looked as though the old firebrand had found peace. But Burr's lifelong vice, his compulsion for women, refused to fade, even at the age of 77. In 1833, he shocked New York society by marrying Eliza Jumel, a wealthy widow nearly 2 decades his junior. Her life, one archivist quipped, had been born a bastard, in youth a prostitute, in Middle Ages a social climber, and died an eccentric. Their union began as business. Jumel had sought Burr's legal advice on her late husband's estate. It turned swiftly into a shotgun wedding that lasted barely 6 months. The divorce was a spectacle. Jamel accused her elderly husband of adultery with multiple women, one only 26 years old. Burr shot back with charges that she herself had been cavorting with lovers, including, scandalously, a coachman. Witnesses of dubious character lined up on both sides. Perjury charges flew. Beneath the lurid headlines lay a deeper betrayal. Jamel claimed Burr had schemed to defraud her of property in order to settle his endless debts. The accusation carried a bitter irony. Their relationship had begun with Burr as her legal protector. He denied all charges, but ultimately relented, choosing not to contest the divorce. And then, in a final twist worthy of the life he had lived, Aaron Burr died on the very day the divorce was granted. Even in his last act, whenever he thought he had cleared the storm, fate found a way to strike him down. Biographer Nathan Schreiner observed that probably of no one else in American history are there more unsupported and unsupportable tales in circulation. Who in history has survived a more venomous brood of decriers? Even his final words are uncertain. When pressed by a friend to declare faith in God on his deathbed, Burr reportedly replied only, "On that subject, I am coy." He died in 1836 at the age of 80 after 2 strokes had left him partially paralyzed and debilitated. There were no weeping children or loyal friends at his bedside. The man who once dreamed of shaping nations passed away alone in a Staten Island boarding house. He was buried with military honors at Princeton, near his father's grave. Yet even in death, Burr remained just a little out of line. Journalist Mark Bernstein notes that while Alexander Hamilton rests beneath a grand obelisk in Trinity Churchyard, Burr's stone in Princeton tilts slightly, misaligned among the neat rows of presidents and ministers. It looks less like a monument and more like a reminder of a life lived askew, brilliant, defiant, and never fully at rest. In the end, Burr's story reminds us of the impartiality of time and fate. Because death doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints. It takes and it takes and it takes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to interact with the show, you can email us at resourcesbylowery@gmail.com or find us on Bluesky beneath the handle EmpiresPod. If you would like to financially support the show, please look in the description for more information. As always, thank you for listening, rating the show, and spreading the word.